Hello. About a month ago I managed to break my Diatone number 37 quadcopter frame without actually damaging any of the other components. So I thought what I'd do is just take all the bits and pieces off that one and just plop them straight onto a different frame as is. So I didn't change any of the wiring or anything. But the frame style that I've gone for this time is a little bit like the cheap-ass quadcopter build that I made last year, with a couple of minor changes, really, nothing major. The first one that's most obvious is that instead of having the this plate flat onto the sidebar there, there's a spacer there, so we can fit some stuff inside instead of having it outside. Because the goal of this is to have something that you can fly around with, doing FPV and crash into trees and things without having too many things break on it. The other thing that's changed significantly from the original cheap-ass quadcopter frame is that rather than having the screw hole here at the join of the main section and the arm, I've actually put a little extra piece of wood out on the front instead, so that's being held in by the screw, so that there's no screw at this point, because I found that when you drill holes through stuff it gets weaker, strangely, and this point here is where all the stress comes in when you smash into something like that. So the idea was that instead of having a screw there, we just have the one in the center, and all this is here for is to stop the arm from sliding sideways. So you only really need one screw if you have a couple here. And the other side effect of that I found that was quite nice is that all you need, if you are out somewhere and you break this, it's very easy to make a spare. You just need to cut a piece of wood that's the right length and then use these motor mounts as templates. So these are the motor mounts that come with the Sunny Sky motors when you buy them, and just drill a couple of holes like that at each end for the motors and one right in the middle, and that's it. So it takes literally about 3-4 minutes maybe to make one of those if you're quick at it, and you can just take those with you, and when you crash, all you need is a screwdriver and a little thingy. What do you call this? Socket, wrench, or whatever. And you can change the arm in, I'd like to say a couple of minutes, but it actually turned out to be more like about 10 minutes, but that's still not too bad. So the reason I know how long it takes to change these arms is because I've actually broken a couple of them already, and that was a little bit disappointing because, as I said, my whole idea with this design was that it was supposed to be strong. So I think that I'm using 12mm square beams here, so I think maybe a little bit bigger, maybe 15mm, would have been able to avoid the 2 crashes that I had, because they weren't really huge crashes, I don't think. I mean, I've been flying FPV a lot more lately, so I don't really get a good look at how it crashed sometimes. But I thought that these arms would have been stronger, and they were not, so I'm glad that it's quite easy to change them. So the total cost for this frame, I guess the wood was about $2.50, I think, roughly, and the screws were about $8, so it's sort of like $12 or so for the whole frame. And as for the FPV gear, what I've put on here is actually, let's just have a look at some photos that I took while I was putting it together. That is not what I want. Okay, so I guess you I just told you that. Oh, the other thing that I changed from the cheap-ass quadcopter design was that it's a 250 size now instead of a 290, and the central section is a little bit wider. So this is the arm going through the middle. You can see that there's no you know, there's nothing there, so it's should be strong, but it's not really, not as strong as I hoped anyway. So the reason it's a little bit wider in the middle there is to put the ESCs inside there and keep the central section free. And this turned out to be mostly okay. So this is the setup just before the maiden flight, before I put any of the FPV gear on. Oh, and I'm using the NRF24L01 receiver, and the flight controller is the Flip 32 running clean flight. So this I did also change from the frame I had it on before. So this is using my slightly modified version of clean flight that lets you integrate the NRF24 module onto the flight controller directly, and it's just stuck onto the there's a little bit of double-sided tape that's holding it on. Oh, okay, it's not holding it on actually. Maybe I need to, okay, there we go, it's better. And it just sits there, and it has remained largely undamaged so far. I haven't had any trouble with it, and the reception seems to be quite good. But anyway, let's just have a look at a little bit of footage from the very first maiden flight of this quad, and it turned out to be very, very stable. I was quite happy with it right from the start. And here's a little bit more footage from when I was testing out the new Gemfan 5045 props, but unfortunately the beck that's in the ESCs that I'm using seems to struggle to provide enough power when there's a full throttle burst. So you can see that it sort of drops out quite a bit. So I think I'm going to have to leave these props for a while until I have a little bit more beefy system to run them with. Okay, if you give it a really sudden turn on, it loses it. Watch this. Not every time though. Yeah. So if you blip it from a low throttle to a high throttle real quick, it tends to lose track of what's going on. But if you do it a little bit more gradually like that, it's fine. So the FPV setup I have on here is, as you can see, there's just one of those little really small cameras on the front there. This is the one that I had way back right at the beginning, still hanging in there. Does a reasonable job, but it's getting a bit blurry, I think, and it's not just because of the crap on here. It's just, I don't know, it seems to be aging a little bit, but still good enough. And the transmitter is one that I put together from a Boscam transmitter module and a couple of capacitors and a little voltage step down. And it was supposed to be zip tied in there securely, but it has shuffled itself around a bit over the last month or so. And the idea with this foam block on the top here, this whole setup was supposed to be temporary actually. I was thinking to move this camera into here because it will actually fit, because this is 12mm and the camera size is 12mm as well. It'll fit perfectly. And I was going to put the Mobius on here, of course. So this block at the back is the same foam, and it's just stuck in there under a zip tie, so comes out quite easily to let you get at the screw there, and goes in also fairly easily. And it's supposed to be there to hold the transmitter antenna up like that, but it doesn't do a very good job, so I'm putting a rubber band around this when I fly now. Likewise, this is all slipped out as well, but flies great. I mean, I really love it. This is probably one of my most enjoyable quads to fly that I've had so far. It's just really stable, reasonably fast. What else have I got to say? Not a whole lot really. Yeah, that's about it, I think. Oh, so one problem I did have was that the way I've put the ESCs in here, I think they're suffering from a bit of vibration because they're not really, they're not completely secure. You can probably see the one there that I'm moving in the bottom. And I think it's because of that once in a while one of these caps will work its way loose and it'll get a connection where it's touching the solder joint but it's not actually connected. So when the vibrations strike just right, it will that motor will just stop. So apparently those capacitors are quite important for these ESCs. So could be worth my while to secure them a little bit better, I think. But yeah, everything works great. So the Mobius, of course, I'm just sticking on the top here, and I just did that one day because I was impatient and I couldn't wait. I was, like I say, I was going to put the camera down there and put the Mobius on there. However, it turned out to be quite jello free, surprisingly, especially when you're using a brand new set of props. So I've just been flying it like that for the whole month, and yeah, the video turns out fairly good. Not superb, but it's definitely watchable. Alright, so yeah, that's about all I wanted to say about this. So I've recorded a bunch of footage from the last month or so, mostly FPV stuff though, since that's mostly what I've been doing, but I'll put some of that in at the end of this video, and yeah, hopefully it's enjoyable to watch. Alrighty, catch you later.
Well, I wish I could say this was a really strong design, but it doesn't seem to be. I wasn't really going that fast there, but it's broken off right at the base of the arm again.